This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
Mark Carney's got his hands full. Canadians are starting to wonder if Canada will ever get a deal done with the United States. The housing crunch is real. Climate action groups are sounding the alarm as the PM hits pause on the EV mandate and appears to soften a commitment to the Paris Agreement. Premiers want details on bail reform. There's a new major projects office headquartered in Calgary with a $500 billion mandate. Israel is escalating the Middle East crisis. Oh, and Carney, raised in Edmonton, is seeing separatist sentiment appear to rise in Alberta. We've got a lot of ground to cover as we welcome Prime Minister Mark Carney exclusively to the Real Talk studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse in downtown Edmonton in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre says you've flip-flopped on Canada's EV mandate. Hot right out of the gates here, that you finally admitted that the Conservatives were right, just like they were right on the carbon tax. Is that the case?
Oh, Ryan, well, first off, it's great to see you. Great to be here. I guess for others to hear you. And great to be back home. Look, there's a lot in that question. Let's be clear about several things. The first is there is a lot of pressure on the auto sector right now. Pressure because of U.S. tariffs, which are fundamentally changing the economics for Canadian automakers. Pressures because of technological change and other aspects. So what we're doing is we're putting a pause on this EV mandate for next year. That's part of a much bigger set of things we're doing for the automakers, providing them with liquidity, providing them with capital so they can retool and become more competitive. Building out new markets, working with the steel sector, working with labor, working with a variety of other things. So it needs to be seen in the overall aspect. The second thing, there's lots of things that Pierre Poilievre has been consistent about and been consistently wrong about. One of the things he's been consistently wrong about is the fact that lower carbon, lower emission, EVs, hybrids, using biofuels and other things, a big announcement we made last week that's going to make biofuels, Canadian biofuels, much more effective, including using Canadian canola. He's been wrong about the fact that that's part of what's driving competitiveness in the auto sector. Absolutely blind to where the sector is going. We know where the sector is, where it's going, and we're helping to support the changes that are necessary.
U.S. tariffs have forced your government into regulatory adjustments. How do you defend those changes to Canadians who see them as a step backward on climate policy?
Well, look, we're very focused on what we're calling climate competitiveness. In other words, making sure that whether it's Canadian oil and gas, whether it's Canadian automakers, whether it's Canadian electricity, Canadian artificial intelligence, that it's being produced in a way that's competitive as possible. And part of that is moving to lower carbon. So one of the attractions, we're here in Edmonton. Let's talk about a few things in Alberta, if you don't mind. The Pathways Project, which is carbon capture. It's potentially transformative for helping reinforce what the oil sand producers have been doing, which is to get their emissions down. Now it can take a step change for that. We're seeing it in lower carbon LNG. Projects that are building out on that. We're seeing it in nuclear. We're seeing it in a variety of areas that we're supporting. So look, there's a broad range of programs that are needed to make us carbon competitive. I'll give you one last one, which is a big one. We're going to be making some announcements next week around how we're going to accelerate home building in this country, how we're going to leverage, and we're in Alberta. I'm going to leverage Alberta technology. ATCO, one of the pioneers in prefabricated modular housing, much lower carbon in the construction, much lower carbon and much cheaper to live in. We want to scale that. We want to scale that technology by the tens of thousands, and we're going to move that forward.
How do you find that balance? What sort of safeguards do you look at to ensure that industry competitiveness doesn't override emissions reductions?
Well, it's a part of its timing, Ryan, and that is a tough balance sometimes to get right. The exact timing in which you're moving from an existing industry to one that does need to be lower carbon, lower cost. I mean, in the end, what's going to drive this is that it's going to be lower cost to consumers. And so I gave the example on housing. That's going to be 20%, 25% cheaper to live in. It's actually 25% cheaper to build, 25% cheaper carbon footprint in both construction and development. So you can move on that timing relatively quickly in housing. In sectors like autos, it moves in step. Heavy-duty trucking, for example, it takes a little longer, so you got to be conscious of that. Similarly, in some heavy industry, getting the timing right. So we're working with industry. We're working with provinces. One of the issues that we're working on, and I mean that constructively, it's not a fight. I'm working with Premier Smith, working the government of Alberta in getting the horizon right for transition.
Conservatives have long made hay fighting with Ottawa, and I know that a big priority of yours and probably the general theme of your election campaign message was that you can get deals done. You can work with the provinces. You can eliminate interprovincial trade barriers. You can find a way for them all to work together. Are those paving stones in place?
We're putting those paving stones in place, to keep the analogy going. And I think, first off, it's what Albertans and what Canadians expect of their elected representatives. They want us to work together, find ways to work together. So I gave the example of the Pathways project, and the Pathways combined with a hydrocarbon pipeline makes sense from the perspective of Premier Smith, who called it a grand bargain, from the perspective of myself and the federal government. So we're working together to try to make that happen. What we're doing, I would characterize the relationship as open. Premier Smith's very clear about what the issues she has. By last count, I think it was 9 major issues that she had. We're open about our perspective, and we're working constructively through them. That's what Albertans expect. That's what Canadians expect. Look, you'll see some announcements coming in the next few weeks that start to add to those paving stones. There's a lot more to fully fill out that path.
What was that moment like? What was the first moment when you saw it's characterized in Alberta as Premier Smith's list of 9 demands to Ottawa, and they landed shortly after you won the election. How seriously do you take them? Did you read all 9? Have you taken action on any of them? Have you discussed them?
If the Premier is going to make a series of points or send me a letter, even not making a series of points, making one, I'm obviously going to read it, and we're going to work on it and look to respond. And we would expect the same. Look, I characterize it a little differently, as opposed to demands and summits and a fight. I look at it as there's issues to be solved for Albertans, for Canadians. We want to grow jobs. We want to grow the economy, not just today, but 5 years out, 10 years out, put in place really sustainable building blocks for prosperity for Albertans and for Canadians. That's what the Premier wants. That's what I want. Look, we come from slightly different places on certain issues, but we can find ways to work together. And that's literally, we've had teams quietly talking their way through on a number of these issues. And she and I will meet later today, and I look forward to that discussion.
More with Prime Minister Mark Carney in just a moment, including recent developments in the Middle East. This episode is happening with the support of California Closets of Canada. If you've got your elbows up, if you're looking to support a Canadian-owned and operated business, and you're looking for a custom closet or storage solution anywhere in your home, look no further than California Closets. This is a proudly family-owned business operating, of course, out of Canada and building everything they install right here in our home province of Alberta. The California Closets journey starts with a free design consultation. You can book that online today at californiaclosets.ca. Learn more about a custom entertainment center, maybe a dream custom closet or wardrobe, even a garage storage system that'll transform that area of your home. That consultation available without cost today at californiaclosets.ca. If you're looking to advance your own clean energy goals, if you're looking to go solar, it's never been more doable. Our friends at Kubi Energy can get you started, walking you through every step of the way, learning more about that Canada Greener Homes Loan and programs like the Clean Energy Improvement Program. You don't have to shell out the full cost up front to get started, and that means you can turn your roof or any extra space into something that's actually going to save you money long term. Cut your energy bills and make a move toward a cleaner, brighter future. Check out kubi.ca. That's kubi.ca/solar to get your free quote today. Friesen Brothers celebrating 70 years as a proudly Alberta-grown and Alberta-owned company. The Alberta Beef Roundup has been a huge part of Friesen Brothers' legacy over the past 7 decades. You can read more about it on their website, friesen.com. That's FRESON.com. These are these 60-pound packs of real Alberta beef, expertly cut and wrapped by their in-store butchers, just how your family likes it. Learn more again at friesen.com or visit one of their 16 Alberta locations. And if you spent your summer as a successful Canadian pausing, reflecting on your career or retirement goals, at North Road Investment Council, they're working with Canadians who have done exactly that. They've built the successful careers. Now you want to ensure that your wealth is being organized to deliver a successful retirement. North Road's typical client comes from an analytical or detail-driven profession. Maybe you're an engineer or an architect or a dentist. With $2 million in investable assets or more, the team at North Road would love to open up a conversation. They know life's financial journey doesn't always follow a straight path. You can visit northroadic.com to connect with Marshall Carey and the team at North Road Investment Council. Abacus reports that just 33% of Canadians right now believe that the government is on track in forging a new relationship with the U.S. Your promise to strike a deal with the states was, of course, a signature of your April election campaign. What's your deadline?
My promise to Canadians was to stand up for Canada. My promise to Canadians was elbows up, get the best possible deal for Canada. And getting the best possible deal for Canada includes not signing a substandard deal. I'm sure Connor McDavid's agent is looking for the best possible. I know it's a sore spot. Now. I'm with you, but looking for the best possible deal for Canada. Where are we right now? Right now, 85% of our trade with the United States is tariff free. Okay, we have the lowest average tariff of any country in the world. So we have the best deal right now. That is a deal that developed over the course of the last several months. That is an agreement that President Trump put his signature on in his executive order at the start of August. We have real issues, though, at the same time. So we're in a position that's better than anyone else, but we still have real issues because the U.S. has changed their deal. So we've made a lot of progress. We want to make more progress. Steel, autos, aluminum, forest products, very important here in Alberta. And the steel sector, it's causing problems, I know, for manufacturers and the energy sector here in Alberta. So we want to make more progress there. And we're aware that there will be a review of our agreement with the U.S. And Mexico, the so-called CUSMA agreement. That review is going to start next year, so we're getting ready for that. So we're working hard to find solutions with the Americans, but we're starting with the best position. We've got ourselves to the best position. We want to improve it. And I would like to hope that is the circumstance that also applies to the world's greatest hockey player with the Edmonton Oilers.
Man. Wow.
I know. I'm sorry to, it's on my mind.
The skating with the Oilers thing last year, that was something everybody that reaches out to the show wants us to ask you about that. The skating with the Oilers thing. Had they won the Stanley Cup, were you in a position to take credit for it? And if so, do you own some of the loss to Florida?
That's interesting. Okay, I'll take that on my shoulders. I'll take it off anyone else's shoulders.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Coolest experience of my life, though.
Was it really?
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, people want to know why you didn't suit up as goaltender.
Probably because I wouldn't have stopped any shots.
Okay, yeah. You've just established a major projects office to fast track approvals for projects that are deemed to be in the national interest, headquartered in Calgary, and you've pledged a considerable $500 billion essentially in investment. But with the movement of private capital in Canada restricted by regulation, not public spending, what else will you do to fix the regulatory maze?
So first thing, let me just correct, if you don't mind, something you just said.
Please.
We're not pledging $500 billion of public money.
Sure.
We are catalyzing $500 billion of investment. The vast majority of that is private money. So we got to do it right. And the second part of your question goes exactly to one of the issues, which is we got to change the attitude in Ottawa and the effectiveness in Ottawa on regulation and green lighting projects. And part of what the mandate of the Major Projects Office is and there's associated changes to legislation that we've passed through Parliament with bipartisan support. The Conservative Party supported this, I'll note, is to shift from why to how, to move for these major projects to have how are we going to get them done, as opposed to should we get them done, why would we get them done. And so projects that are building our independence as a country, that are diversifying our economy, projects that have Indigenous participation, they're aligned with Indigenous people, projects that are also helping meet our climate goals, moving towards when we look at all the projects together. So we put that in place. The Major Projects Office, as you rightly said, headquartered in Calgary, led by Don Farrell, one of Canada's great CEOs, 4 decades of experience running companies in the energy sector, including TransAlta, right here. TransAlta, how much Albertan can you get? She's running it, and God love her for doing that, stepping up public service at this stage. We will announce the first wave of those projects tomorrow in Edmonton. We will announce the first wave of those. I emphasize on first wave because we will announce the next wave by Grey Cup.
Interesting development within your caucus, by the way, the climate caucus that is organized just ahead of these national caucus meetings in Edmonton. What do you make of the development? What's your communication been like with your MPs?
Look, we have a number of caucuses. We have a regional caucus, prairie caucus, rural caucus, agriculture focused, Jewish caucus, Muslim caucus. We have a variety, MPs have a variety of interests. They pool together, they concentrate on the interests, and there's open communication. So it's a good thing. Look, we're looking to be climate competitive. We have important policies that are very focused. I'll make one point, it's really important, Ryan, which is maybe a different shift on this government or a different emphasis on this government. We're focused on results. We're focused on the investment that's necessary to help reduce emissions. So whether it's in the housing sector, which I talked about, whether it's in energy, different aspects of energy, both in clean and conventional, that's going to take investment. We've got to have that mindset, and whether it's making regulation more effective, in other words, making decisions faster so investment can go into the ground quicker, or whether it's incentivizing certain types of investment, the federal government needs to be much more of a partner, focus on results. That's what we're doing, and I expect that the climate caucus will help along with that.
Prime Minister Mark Carney, our guest in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. You've just announced your government will introduce legislation next month to tighten Canada's bail system, making it harder for those accused of serious crimes essentially to be released. Ontario's Premier Doug Ford says that the premiers will hold you accountable for delivering full-fledged, his words, and not half-baked reform. What does full-fledged reform look like to you at minimum?
Well, what full-fledged reform? Several things. One is this is something we ran on, something we committed to in the election, to do bail reform when there's guns involved. And so making it tougher to get bail when guns involved, when there's gang, when there are repeat offenders, when there's home invasions, when there's car theft, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, a multiple set of areas where we need to toughen the penalties or tighten the ability to get bail. We're toughening penalties in other areas. We can come to that if we have time. Now, to get it right, we've sat down, our justice minister sat down with their provincial counterparts, have sat down and worked through what full-fledged looks like and designed this accordingly. I sat down with Premier Ford a couple days ago, I think it was last Friday, in Toronto. We talked through a number of the issues around this. So it's going to come out on the basis of having been informed by the Alberta Attorney General and Justice Minister and their counterparts across the country. We're going to get it right. But let me make a crucial point here, Ryan. This is part of a bigger puzzle to get crime down, make our communities safe. Obviously, we think and we agree, the provinces think we need bail reform. We're doing that. We need to have the police adequately resourced so they can do their jobs. We need to stop guns at our border, which is why we're putting another 1,000 border service agents in place. The RCMP needs to be more effective. That's why there's another 1,000 RCMP officers that have been resourced. and on. So it's both at the federal level, provincial, and of course municipal level.
Prominent gun control groups urging you to act swiftly on election promises on firearms. Meantime, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith went on the record at one of her recent Alberta Next town halls. I'm sure you've been briefed on it, saying that all levels of government and police within the province, including RCMP, have been instructed not to participate in any gun confiscation. What do you intend to do on the firearms file specifically? And what do you make of Premier Smith's position?
I'm not going to, the exact quote, maybe I'll leave the quote to the side, but I'll pick up one word there, confiscation. This is not about confiscation. This is about voluntary return of firearms for compensation, compensation of these firearms, and we'll run a process. Look, we'll have different processes in different provinces. I respect the decision of the province of Alberta and in their areas of jurisdiction, but this process will unroll. Canadians will have
Alberta's premier's mischaracterizing the situation, right?
Well, look, I didn't see the exact quote. You give my briefing maybe greater credit than it is. We're not confiscating guns. People aren't going around confiscating guns. That is anyone who says that is a mischaracterization. What it is an opportunity for Canadians to return guns for compensation. And let's be clear. We are not talking about hunting rifles. We're not talking or sport shooting or anything like that. We're talking about assault rifles. We are talking about weapons of, serious weapons, let's put it that way.
You're obviously Edmonton rings strongly within you.
Yep.
Spent a lot of years here. Of course, launched your campaign for Liberal leadership here. How are you assessing what feels like a rise in separation or sentiments in the province of Alberta?
I launched my campaign in Laurier Heights, where I grew up and learned to play hockey. And I think about it when I hit the ice. A few years after I hit the ice, there were tensions between the province, Premier Lougheed, great Alberta Premier, and the federal government around resource sharing and development of resources. That got worked out. I understand the frustrations in particularly, let's go back to what we were talking about earlier, in the development of the resources of the province, realizing the full potential of Alberta. The importance of the federal government working collaboratively with Alberta and Alberta working collaboratively with the federal government. I'd suggest that we're doing a number of things at the federal level that make that possible. I'm encouraged by the progress that's being made. I know that a lot more progress can be made. And I'll say this as well, which is, one of the things in this job, being Prime Minister, it's a privilege, obviously, to have this job. One of the responsibilities, though, is to go to other countries, deal with other countries, meet investors, business people from other countries. And the world admires and respects our country. We're not perfect. The world wants what we have. They respect our values. We're stronger together. My responsibility is to make sure that we realize that.
More with Prime Minister Mark Carney in just a moment. If you've got a hot take on what you're hearing in this Real Talk interview, we want to hear from you to talk@ryanjespersen.com. Our final episode of every week, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. We present the Flamethrower. Your hottest takes all week, every week, presented by the DQs in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. Fire up your Flamethrower today. Talk@ryanjespersen.com. Every Thursday here on the show, we feature a story where Alberta wins. I want to talk to you about how Alberta wins with Play Alberta. Not only is it the most safe and secure way to bet casino, sports, and lottery online, not only does all revenue go right back to the province, but Albertans are winning big every single day. 10, 50, even as much as $100,000 is won daily on Play Alberta. They've even made millionaires. And best of all, for a limited time only, new players can receive a $1,000 casino bonus. Download the app wherever you get your apps. Check out all the great offers and get started today. Check out playalberta.ca for more. There's no better time to take that degree or master's program than right now. Go to athabascau.ca for more information and join learners across Canada. If you've been thinking about going back to school, Athabasca University is Canada's open university, serving students coast to coast with 35 online master's and doctorate programs. The only commute at AU is to your device. Athabasca is designed to fit your life. For ambitious people across Canada and beyond, AU offers flexible approaches to higher education. Take your education to the next level. Athabasca University is Canada's anyone, anywhere, anytime open university for advanced learning. Learn more about the AU Advantage today by visiting athabascau.ca. You know, the Edmonton General Region is home to more than 38,000 businesses. That metro region, nearly 40,000 businesses contributing over $110 billion to Canada's GDP. From independent shops to global innovators, this city's entrepreneurs are building the future. There's no doubt about that. But to really unlock Edmonton's potential, Ottawa has to clear the path for growth, and that's the focus of the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce's new federal action plan. This is a roadmap calling for tax reform, smarter trade policy, infrastructure investment, and the skilled workforce Canada needs to stay competitive. The Chamber's not just pushing for change in Ottawa, though. They're here for local businesses every single day. Chamber members get powerful connections, cost-saving programs, and a stronger collective voice when it comes to policy and advocacy. So if you run a business in Edmonton, or if you're looking to grow one, check out the Federal Action Plan and learn how Chamber membership can put Edmonton's entire business community right there behind you. Networking opportunities available today at edmontonchamber.com. And if you happen to be catching this exclusive episode of Real Talk on Wednesday, the 10th of September, I want you to cancel your plans. If you're anywhere in Edmonton or nearby from 2 to 6 p.m. as our friends at UCAN Youth Services are hosting a grand opening celebration to officially launch their new space. It is an ambitious goal that they have reached. This is just the first step, though. They're looking for your support, corporations, individuals, as they aim to double their service offerings, helping Edmonton area youth out of harm's way and into economic opportunity. You can learn more about the work at UCAN Youth Services by checking out their website, ucan.ca. And don't forget, if it's Wednesday, September 10th, you're listening to this from 2 to 6 p.m., you can swing on by UCAN Youth Services' new headquarters on the corner of 109th Street, 103rd Avenue. Our huge congratulations to them. We're so proud to make UCAN our charity of choice this year, right here at Real Talk. In closing, Prime Minister, you recently called Israel's strikes in Qatar an intolerable expansion of violence. So what concretely is Canada prepared to do about it? What can Canada do about it? And does this mark, maybe a shift in our position, our overall position on Israel's actions in the region?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's be absolutely clear. This is a clear violation of international law. It's an unprovoked attack. Qatar has been working for a number of years, a number of months, a number of weeks, and as recently as yesterday, to try to broker a ceasefire in Gaza. The United States and others condemned this unprovoked attack. What Canada is looking to do, we're continuing to work in a very, very difficult situation, is to find a path to an end of hostilities, provide humanitarian aid. We're one of few countries that have been able to get humanitarian aid directly into Gaza. All of this in the context of a policy that has been in place since John Diefenbaker, through Lester Pearson, Stephen Harper, and that we continue to uphold, which is a two-state solution. That means a free and peaceful Palestinian state living side by side with Israel in freedom, peace, and security. That's what we have to move towards. Everything we do is to try to advance that goal. Yesterday's attacks on Qatar did not advance that goal, as observed by the United States. It's an intolerable attack in the sense of it violates international law. we look to move forward from this point.
Prime Minister, we want to thank you for making the Real Talk studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse.
It is. It's fantastic.
In downtown Edmonton.
And can I say, Ryan, as I walked in, I saw the high-level diner sign, the Museum of...
the Neon Sign
Museum. Fantastic. Brought back a lot of memories.
Well, we're it's an incredible installation.
It is scary that your memories of a place are in a museum.
Isn't it?
That makes me feel a little older than you.
Well, you've still got some good years ahead of you. I know Canadians are hoping.
Thanks.
And I know, by the way, our friends at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce are hoping to welcome you back to Alberta's capital city for a State of the Nation event sometime down the line. So I look forward to an opportunity to check in with you again. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Ryan.
You got it. The Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable Mark Carney, here on Real Talk.
Edmonton is here because the river is here. So we care for it, protect it, share it. The water of the North Saskatchewan sustains all of us. It's a big job to treat and deliver it, river to tap, to over 1 million people. So you can have and enjoy a glass of the Sask. On tap, made local by Epcor.
All right, we're going to get to more of your comments. We got more of your comments. We're going to be jumping into the Real Talk live chat, powered by Park Power in just a second. A lot of you with a lot to say about Mark Carney's message to Canadians. Of course, all of this as Liberal MPs gathering in Alberta's capital city ahead of returning to Parliament. Session to resume in a week or so. These live chat opportunities are powered by our friends at Park Power. If you're looking to pay less, and who isn't, on electricity, natural gas, and internet, you can visit parkpower.ca, or even better, check out parkpower.ca/realtalk for exclusive bundling discounts. If you bring your business, internet, electricity, and natural gas over to Park Power, you can save up to $150 in your very first month. Plus, they're offering Alberta's best solar loyalty program. That's the Solar Club. Helps you raise money, basically, and put it toward the power that you're paying for, right? The power you produce is helping you out, and you're helping Alberta's transition to a greener future. You can learn more today at parkpower.ca. Johnny and I wanted to look our best for the PM when he popped in, right? Right? It's not your average interview. We got a haircut, cleaned ourselves up, and I had to go see my pal Chad at the Helm Clothing. Every time there's a big moment on this show, you better believe that I'm going to be stepping into their stunning 3-story retail experience in Edmonton's downtown core. This is just like 2 blocks from our studio. A beautiful, as mentioned, 3-story retail experience. And I'm using that word experience on purpose. They're focusing on custom suits and luxury casual wear. I basically go in there and I say, guys, here's the event, or here's the situation. Can you just help me look my best? And they do. If you're big into brands like Ralph Lauren, Xenia, Brunello Cucinelli, and others, you can find them in many cases exclusively at The Helm. Of course, online as well at thehelmclothing.com. Really proud to be partnering with the team, the talented team at The Helm Clothing. You've still got some time to get out on the golf course. The Ranch Golf and Country Club, just 20 minutes from Edmonton's downtown, is Alberta's #1 public track. And they've still got a big September ahead. It is in magnificent shape. This is my buddies. We call this Party Valley. Putting out here on 16. Andrew Walker gets it close with the birdie attempt. Winds up parring out. Look at those greens. Look at the fairways out at the ranch. They're doing an unbelievable job. Nobody does tournaments better. Mark your calendar, by the way. June 18th, 2026, the 5th annual Real Talk Golf Classic. You got plenty of time to get out and enjoy the ranch. Before then, book your tee time today at theranchgolf.com. And our friends at Peace Hills Insurance know that Canadians are shopping around. They are looking for the best partnership when they're serving their family's home, auto, or business needs. Peace Hills Insurance is owned by the Samson Cree Nation, and their mission through Watokowan is basically to be a respected national insurer that provides creative and responsive solutions, a unique insurance company that truly cares. That's what Wahkotowan is all about. And some of the ways that they do this, some of the ways they show they truly care, they give back to communities they serve by working with their broker partners. You'll see them funding a ton of local projects. And they're also offering meaningful and stable employment opportunities with a fun and unique corporate culture. Oh, and obviously, of course, offering policyholders compassionate and dedicated service. When you call Peace Hills Insurance, a human being's going to answer. You can get that journey started today. Get a quote. Chat with an agent at peacehillsinsurance.com. Technical producer John Hicks pulling this thing together and doing an absolutely magnificent job. Never a small deal when the sitting prime minister of a G7 nation is visiting a talk show, let alone an independent media entity. And we want to welcome those of you that are joining us maybe for the first time in a long time or maybe for the first time ever. We got a ton of comments here in the live chat that I want to get to. People had a lot to talk about. I saw one from Peach in there, said more spending is needed on affordable housing to reduce rents. Says it's important to show how government can increase supply and investment, says especially from Europe. I also noted a bit of a back and forth when he was talking about that major projects office out of Calgary, this big one a lot of people are talking about. Joe writes in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says no new pipelines, and Giants for Life right after says bring on more pipelines. And so I think we've got a diverse audience in here today, obviously with here looking to hear a lot of different things, different positions from the Prime Minister. And by the way, interesting insight into his experience skating with the Oilers. We had a bunch of people write in ahead of time and say, see if you can find some time to ask him about skating with the Oilers. What did he call it? He called it the coolest moment of his life. As a prime minister, saying that skating with the Oilers was the coolest moment of his life.
Probably, yeah. For an Edmonton boy, that probably had to be high up there. But I was also he was pretty enamored with our studio space. And
Isn't that cool?
He the first thing he did was like he wanted to walk around outside of it and just kind of look at. You could tell like he'd been in this building years ago because he was like, he went out in the hallways and he was looking around and he was pointing at different things and he was looking at the Neon Sign Museum out front.
He loved the 100-year-old floors.
And then when he came in, he was like, wow, these floors. He's like, you've protected them. And I'm like, you said like. There's probably like 3 layers of lacquer over top. That's why they still exist. But yeah, everything in this building, Mercer building, that's why we love being here. It's just, it's kind of under glass. It's the same way it was. I mean, there's the modern, there's internet and all these things have been installed and in the walls, but it's still the walls. It's behind you right now. This brick
you
was
can
here.
Feel this,
100 years ago.
You can feel his connection to Edmonton for sure. And I mean, I don't know if that's politicking or not. I mean, it's a guy talking about where he's from, a guy talking about where he grew up at least. But referencing the High Level Diner, which is like a brunch institution on the south end of the High Level Bridge. For those of you that are maybe joining from another part of Canada or unfamiliar with it, the High Level Bridge is as old as Alberta, basically. And it connected these cities of Strathcona and Edmonton, which are now, of course, Greater Edmonton. It's basically the White Avenue area. And then north where the Alberta legislature is. But like a lot of those local references, and I don't think that it's a mistake that major projects office was opened in Calgary, to say the least. I think that it sends a message, in Alberta, energy-aligned CEO to lead that, which I think sends a message. Obviously, there's not a guarantee of a new pipeline. I know that a lot of people are wanting to hear that from the Prime Minister to basically rubber stamp and guarantee a pipeline, but those pieces are in place, and he knows, it's obvious when you talk to him, he knows that Canadians are expecting some pretty big things right now. Like I said in the opener, before we officially welcome him to the show, it's like, there's the deal with the United States that's kind of headlining a lot of the news coverage, and that I think is top of mind for many Canadians, including people that are doing business south of the border, or it's impacting their supply chains or their export markets. But people are also looking to him to figure out housing. People are looking at him to figure out the interprovincial trade issues that exist. People are starting to wonder. We asked him about his EV mandate right out of the gates. People are starting to wonder, including Caroline Briette, who joined us in our most recent episode on the 9th of September from Climate Action Network Canada. climate, I won't say activists, but lobby groups, people that are, everyday citizens concerned about Canada's climate policy or the state of the world, are starting to wonder if this government, remaining somewhat coy on its commitment to the Paris Agreement, these 2030 deadlines, if in an effort to get deals done and to get Canadian commerce where it needs to be, if Canada's kind of taking a step back on its environmental commitments, and that's a tightrope to walk for any elected official, let alone a prime minister, right? I think I'm trying to remember the exact wording of the question I asked him, but basically, like, how do you sort of find that balance on industry competitiveness and emissions reductions? And that's obviously one that's I think it's like a tough. It's a tough balance to find because, it's, in particular, talking about your relationship with the premiers. I thought it was interesting. He was the one that brought up Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's list of the 9 demands that she sent to Ottawa. He actually brought that up pretty early in the interview. And, the demands are going to be different, or the asks are going to be different, or the priorities are going to be different in Alberta and Saskatchewan than they are in BC, than they are in Ontario, than they are in the Maritimes. So obviously big tasks ahead, but he is at that point. The election, April 28th, you're looking at it now as basically he's been in office for like 5 months plus. People are starting to say, like, where's the proof in performance, right? Like you said you're going to deliver, you're going to get this deal done with the states. When are you going to get that deal done? And interesting as well that he kind of invoked Connor McDavid's situation with the Edmonton Oilers on that contract extension. I think that everybody in the NHL is watching that one, right? Like, well, when's Connor going to sign? How long? He says, much like Connor, we're not going to sign a substandard deal with the U.S.
It's pretty wild that he said in his latest interview, somebody, I don't want to mention the name because the reporter bugs me, but asked about terms, and he kept using the phrase terms. And Connor Connor starts talking, and then you can see his gears in his brain working, especially when he's talking about this. He's trying to say the right thing, but he said, whether it's a 3-year term or a 6-year term or a 1-year term or a 9-year, he's trying to like widen the gap so he doesn't say anything substantial. And then at the end he says, or no term. And you could just, for a second after he said it, you could hear a pin drop amongst all the reporters holding up the mics. And I've seen a lot of tweets about it since then. And this isn't to guide away from the amazing interview we just had, but to hear Connor for the first time say no term as an option is the scariest thing I've ever fucking heard.
Well, and you get like, you get in a situation too where Mark Carney is talking about like trillions of dollars in trade, like the economy, obviously incredibly important for reasons times a million. And so when you look at the stakes at play, like Canadians might look at the EV mandate or this Paris Agreement or the many other things that Canada's kind of made concessions on, that Canada's been flexible on in negotiations with the U.S. I think at some point you also could have Canadians tiring of that, right? Saying like we're not looking to like bend over backwards again and again on this deal with the U.S. Canada's got to have bargaining power here as well. So so that's something that obviously is going to be top of mind for him.
And kudos to you for coming right out the gate with that. I was like, I wonder, because you didn't even tell me. I'm like, I wonder what his first question was going to be. And you came at him hard with the pulley of comment. And if people go back. I don't know if you caught it. Well, obviously you caught it. You're staring right at him.
Body language.
Dude, he jumped back when you were like, you didn't even you were right into it.
So I'm laughing here because I see our pal Tommy Temper in the chat that just says no hard questions. He says all the usual
the very first
fluff,
question,
word salad. But Tommy's grinding my gears and that's fine. But what I thought, we rolled in hot. I'm like, man, we have limited time.
He went like this.
I was like, welcome, Pierre Poilievre, and he's just like, what? He's like, well, first of all, nice to be here.
Good morning.
But for like some insight behind the scenes, I'm sure like the crew that we've got here working with us today will, we're going to be obviously sending you guys, pushing out some cool behind the scenes content and stuff of his arrival and what's involved, and we'll show you after the fact. Some of the stuff
you had a time limit.
We had like dogs in here and the whole 9 yards. It's quite a thing. The big motorcade outside and so we did, just on the record, I did greet him when he arrived at the building.
Yeah.
That was not my first time.
He didn't just walk in and you started yelling at him.
I did. I kind of like chuckled to myself. I was like, yeah, I guess I did roll in a little hot there.
But he'd already been here for a bit.
Hey, man, if it's the World Series, if you're a pitcher with a big fastball, you're probably going to throw the fastball, right? So there you go. But, a lot of ground to cover. Interesting, he wanted to clarify on this story in these Alberta Next panels that Danielle Smith and the UCP have been hosting. They've been traveling the province for the better part of, I want to say, the last couple of months at least. They've had the in-person town halls. A lot of people have been watching them streaming or watching them later, and then they'll have a couple of virtual or online town halls in the month of October. And, she, I think, raised some eyebrows recently talking about, and Carney's quick to kind of clarify here. Smith talking about gun confiscations, or you'll hear people refer to them as like the gun grab. And she says, basically, and people can find the video, it's all over YouTube. She says, the Alberta government, has basically instructed every law enforcement agency, including the RCMP, to not participate in a gun confiscation. And he kind of I don't want to mischaracterize how he responded to that, but I don't know if he bristled, but you could see, as soon as I used the word confiscation, that was the first thing that he kind of jumped on. Veteran. He's actually not a veteran politician in the sense that this is the first office he's ever held, but a veteran, front-facing, prominent, influential person. The Prime Minister is quick to clarify, says there's going to be no gun confiscation. Nobody's coming to take your guns. But laying out a little bit what I think his priorities look like, that's another instance. We talk about the environmental lobby and everyday Canadians that want to see meaningful climate action, and then the priorities of industry that want to capitalize and maximize the impact of Alberta's natural resources and the economic impact across the country. In so many ways, on the firearms issue, there are prominent groups, including some news conferences in the past week or so, just before we're doing this interview, beginning of September, that are already calling out the Prime Minister, calling out this Liberal government, saying that you made promises on the campaign trail to tighten up Canada's gun laws. And so this is, opportunity. This is fodder for, in particular, conservative opposition and for conservative premiers to start talking about the relationship that a lot of people have with their guns. So you're going to hear people talk about, they're targeting law-abiding gun owners. They're targeting hunters. They're targeting sport shooters. And I think he wanted to get ahead of that on that one. First of all, he says, I haven't heard the quote, right? He says, so I don't know. He says, but I do want to touch on the word confiscation. There's not going to be confiscation. I think it's important. One of the things you really want to accomplish with an interview like this is seeking clarification, seeking details, localizing some of the stories. And when you get kind of a he said, she said kind of a situation with the Prime Minister and the Premier, oftentimes, wouldn't it be great to get them both in the room at the same time? Obviously, we'd love that. But I thought that was an interesting point that he was quick to clarify on that as well.
I want to hear more details, though, because we don't know. It's a gun. He phrased it as a gun buyback program. But does that still mean they go door to door and ask, do you have an assault rifle?
No,
do you want to sell it back to us? It doesn't sound like,
Yeah, this is, there are details online and people can kind of get into the liberal promise.
Yeah.
Basically they're tightening up restrictions on guns. By there's kind of two scenarios here, and this is where I think the issue can be obfuscated, by politicians, or by, let's say, gun activists in this case, right? Fair phrasing to use if I'm talking about climate activists as well. But the gun lobby, which we've reached out to, by the way, the door's open. They've agreed to join us at some point this month. I want to talk to them. They're basically saying they're going to come for your hunting rifles. They're coming for no, they're talking about, there's two scenarios here. There's legal gun owners. There's people that store them in safes and they have the ammunition stored separately and they have their PAL and they transport the gun legally and they use it legally, and that's great. They fill their family's freezer or they go out and shoot skeets or whatever. Skeet or skeets? Shoot skeet? I don't know. Never done it myself.
I think it's skeet.
I've always admired it. I've always thought it's just a fascinating sport. The hand-eye coordination, amazing. These are not the folks that are going to be targeted by this gun law, but you're looking at the scenarios in Canada and you don't need the prime minister or premiers or police chiefs to talk to you about this, you hear, and it's tragic and it's gut-wrenching all the time, families of victims of crime coming out and calling for tighter action on this stuff. You have basically career criminals that are getting out on bail without this reverse onus type situation. I'll get nerdy for like a quick second. Like there have been bail reforms by previous Liberal governments in 2019 and 2023. And a big part of that was this reverse onus thing where the prosecution basically, and I'm not a lawyer, but in civilian understanding, the prosecution in certain cases, like when people are facing certain charges like murder or domestic violence was introduced, there are some implications there with past convictions. If you are deemed to be someone or are alleged to have committed a very serious crime, the prosecution, as of 2019, no longer had to prove to the court that you deserved to be detained until your trial, right? They didn't have to prove that you shouldn't get bail. The reverse onus was then on the accused, where the accused had to prove why they should get bail. And so a big promise that the Liberals made on the campaign trail leading up to this election this year, 2025, was that they would broaden the scope of that reverse onus. And so they would add more offenses to the list of that reverse onus. They would offer a buyback program for Canadians that wanted to surrender firearms that qualified, that like met the criteria of that certain list. But like the idea that RCMP are going to be kicking down people's doors or going door to door, aside potentially from when they have a warrant and there's a raid related to an investigation, in which case I don't think anybody feels sorry for you. That's just not the case. And so I think that, that's an interesting one too. And then the EV mandate too. Like, this is a big one where, as we mentioned in our most recent episode, Pierre Poilievre in the by-election in August in Battle River Crowfoot, his campaign was like, the messaging was probably more heavy on that EV mandate than anything else, right? So probably no surprise to see the Liberals, to see the Prime Minister walk that one back and press pause on it, as politicians do when they want to evaluate it. I think he said 60 days for his, because I think that's one where probably Conservatives were going to start hammering them on that, and he took that arrow right out of their quiver, Stephen's watching us, says Carney's use of the word austerity openly might be the first example that I can remember in talking about budgets. That's from Stephen. That's a big word for a political leader, a premier or a prime minister to use, let alone a Liberal prime minister, right, Stephen? I think you'd agree. I also noted an earlier comment from Stephen who said that North Edmonton DQs just hit a little different. And I think he's absolutely right about that. So we welcome your feedback to talk@ryanjespersen.com. We're going to continue to, we'll review this interview. We'll bring you some of the highlights, and we'll get to more of your comments on this in episodes to come. Also looking forward to Nick Taylor-Vasey, who's going to join me in studio. He's in town from Ottawa in our next episode. That'll be the 11th of September on the Thursday. One of Politico's chief correspondents, really sharp guy. He's actually touring the province as well. Nick got in touch with me. He's on his way down from Fort McMurray today.
Fort Mac.
Yeah, or maybe it's this evening. But he's doing some digging up there, covering some of the political developments up there. Obviously, he'll have a lot to say about the energy sector and what folks in that beautiful Wood Buffalo region are looking for as the Liberal caucus gathers here in Alberta's capital city ahead of returning to Ottawa and returning to Parliament. Ms. KD says 2 sitting prime ministers have now appeared on Real Talk in the studio, by the way. But still no official opposition leader, says Ms. KD. Want to reiterate on the record in this episode, we have reached out again to Mr. Poilievre's office, and we would look forward to having him here on the show at any time.
We will roll out the red, it would probably be a blue carpet, I guess, but we'll roll out a carpet.
Yeah. We ended up both, I don't know if you noticed this, or I know we didn't plan it. We both wore conservative blue to interview the Liberal Prime Minister.
I did notice that, but I also noticed that he walked in with a blue shirt too. So I was like, we're all good.
Okay. Maybe wear a red blazer when Poilievre comes in just to even it out.
Dark blue slacks and top. And a light blue top is like it's a vibe. This summer, fall in Edmonton.
It is. It's very hot.
Lots of people wearing it. Yeah.
It's very hot. Alberta Girl in our live chat says, put those pipelines above ground and pay landowners what their commercial land is worth and reform the Pipeline Act. It gives them the right to screw over all laws, and then we can talk about more pipelines. That from Alberta Girl. I'd be curious to know. People are kind of split on whether or not you need pipelines. There's a story circulating right now, like as we're talking, the day we're talking to you, where there's been, for advocates of increased energy access, in other words, more pipelines, right now people frustrated that there's not already a new pipeline on the list. And the Prime Minister's office is clear. Like he talked here, kind of a gentle correction when I was talking about the $500 billion. He goes, listen, what was the word? He said, I think he said catalyze. He says we're catalyzing $500 billion in investment. That's private capital that's coming in. And one of the big trends people are noticing right now is that private investors, to this point, it's early, not saying it would never happen, not saying it couldn't happen, not saying it will happen, but if there's no private investment appetite for a new pipeline, you can guarantee it's not going to happen. This isn't a federal government that's going to pay for another pipeline. Though I know there is some debate on whether or not TMX is at capacity now or whether there should be another one. I know that Alberta's Premier wants a number of new pipelines. They'd obviously like to see one going to northern BC.
How
probably
many?
Increased access to the U.S. Drill, baby, drill.
I'm going to give you a list of all the pipelines I want and where they go. There's 9 points on it.
Yeah. How about this from Bobby? I love this. Bobby and Tommy are in the
With
chat
an I.
here. IE, as a matter of fact. And they're chatting. Real Talkers are some of you meeting for the very first time, and here warms my heart. We've got folks from across the political spectrum, folks from across Canada that are watching. And Bobby, talking about Tommy's YouTube channel, says, I just subscribed, Tommy. I don't agree with most of what you post, but I want to be informed from your side. It may change my mind on some topics. This is like if we had like a light coming down from heaven and the angels going, that would be my moment. That's it. People connecting, hearing things from different perspectives. Mark Carney, to a certain degree, I mean, if you look at the tail of the tape and how that election played out, Alberta, though he grew up in Alberta, though he launched his Liberal leadership campaign in Alberta, for federal Liberals, it's still perceived as hostile territory, right? You've got Corey Hogan, who obviously won down in Calgary Confederation, which was a pretty significant win. Eleanor Olszewski wins in Edmonton Centre. And aside from that, it's a conservative province through and through when it comes to sending MPs to Ottawa. So, you have to, I think probably it's not unrealistic to read a little bit into some of the locations they're choosing, including the fact that caucus is here in Edmonton right now. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Like, you think about it, John, all the restaurants, all the bars, all the public parks in the off hours. I'm sure they're working a lot. There's going to be a lot of Liberal staffers. There's going to be a lot of Liberal movers and shakers moving around the city of Edmonton, which has a reputation as a bit of a progressive city, certainly, but the capital of a very conservative province. Isn't that an interesting dynamic? Yeah.
But we're open for all. This is a beautiful city, and we have seen them here. The last, starting at the start of the week. We've seen a lot of Liberal staffers and MPs.
A lot of RCMP vehicles around.
And they seem to be enjoying the city. I mean, they picked this place for a reason. It wasn't just random, right?
For sure. Kazman in the chat says apparently there's a pile more capacity available in current pipelines. Wonder if he's talking about TMX. Says, and Asia is electrifying and will need less. Something to consider. Greg is wondering, so how is China doing on emissions reduction? Wise Kyle wants to know, why didn't you ask him if he'd recognize a referendum in Alberta or Quebec? Well, I did ask him about the separation in Alberta, and quite frankly, Kyle wanted to get 8 questions in and got all 8 questions in, and that wasn't one of them. Appreciate you watching the show. Again, talk@RyanJespersen.com. If you disagree with how I handled this interview, you want to throw a little fire my way, coming up on the 12th of September, our Friday episode, the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park presenting the flamethrower. You can submit those to talk@RyanJespersen.com.
And China definitely addressing their emissions. It's going down year over year, lots more clean energy. I mean, I could spout off a bunch of stuff that we could debate over, but it's definitely getting better.
For sure. Don says, a good, solid interview for the time you had. You should be proud he chose you to do this interview. I can't help but read this. Don says, I'm sure some of the mainstream media are very jealous. Yeah, Don, I bet you they are. I bet you they are, and we won't gloat about it, but it is a big moment for us. We're not gonna sort of cover that up or pretend like that's not the case. It's always incredible to have the Prime Minister in studio.
It's nice to be noticed by their team, and that when these people come to town, they swing by the greatest independent media company in the city, located right downtown Edmonton in the beautiful Mercer building right across from Rogers Place.
Very well done, John Hicks. How about this one from Justin? Justin, thanks for your YouTube channel membership. By the way, Cheryl outside, we saw you join as a YouTube channel member today. Thanks for that. Justin says, hot take, I don't really care if the government is taking guns or making it harder for anyone to get one or own one. He says there's nothing wrong with stricter gun laws ever, in my opinion. That from Justin. Ms. B says whether people like the Prime Minister or not, at least he shows up to do interviews. Says Polyev was in Alberta for how long this summer and couldn't be bothered to go on the top podcast in the province, Ms. B. Let's sit there. Blast Sheep says, I'm sorry, guys, it is a confiscation. If they're going to your home to take your firearm, that's a confiscation. Yeah, I mean, like he just said that there's not going to be a confiscation. He just said that on the record. So it sounds like they're not coming to your home to take your guns. But I guess is also the case, like, let's say hypothetically, I'm not a cop, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a prosecutor, definitely not a judge. But we do live in a society with laws that stipulate that if you possess anything illegal, it can be seized, don't we? Like, don't we? Like if there's prohibited things, like if I don't know. I'm not saying that, there was this whole thing about like the RCMP kicking indoors after the High River floods.
Yeah.
Remember people made a big story about that? Yeah. So I don't know. We get them on the record. I mean, it sounds like it's not going to be. It's like, basically this gun buyback program, which I think is, probably, let's just get to it here. So let's spend some time on it just to clarify. So you can check it out at liberal.ca,
I do want to hear
right?
this.
So, so says this release, and this was shared 18 days before the federal election, okay? So this was an election promise released on April 10th of 2025 at liberal.ca. You can Google it to find it. Mark Carney's Liberals release plan to fight crime, protect Canadians, and build safer communities. You scroll down, they say a Mark Carney-led Liberal government will take responsible action to keep assault-style guns off our streets. While respecting the long-standing traditions of hunting and sport shooting in Canada, we will reinvigorate the implementation of an efficient gun buyback program for assault-style firearms, automatically revoke gun licenses for individuals convicted of violent offenses, particularly those convicted of intimate partner violence offenses, a horrific murder in Edmonton, in our home city, just the other day, that potentially relates to a scenario like that. I won't say more until police release all the details, but another gut-wrenching tragedy there. Legislate a requirement for the RCMP to classify new firearm models entering the market instead of the gun industry. Get cops to classify them, not those selling the guns. Increase funding to the RCMP's forensic labs and the Saskatchewan Ballistics Lab to better track down guns used in crimes. Who doesn't want that? And toughen oversights of firearms licensing and strengthen the enforcement of yellow and red flag requirements. And then it goes on from there, talking about recruiting 1,000 RCMP personnel. He touched on that briefly, border officers, prosecution, and the like. So it goes on. It's like more of a comprehensive announcement. But that's what the government has promised. That's what the Liberals promised on the campaign trail. So that now is what, the gun control lobby, I don't think that's what they would prefer to be called. But that's what they're asking for. They're asking for those promises to be kept. And obviously, I think that, people that own guns, gun enthusiasts, firearms enthusiasts are, probably, especially if they're paying attention to what some other politicians are saying about it, they're probably under the belief that their doors are going to be kicked in and their firearms are going to be seized. But the Prime Minister basically says that's not going to happen. So read into it what you will. Let us know what you think. Ryan says, if you don't want to sell it back, then what? Yeah, I don't know. Then what? It says right here, a gun buyback program. It's a voluntary. He used the word voluntary. Didn't he? Correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. I was sitting here. He used the word voluntary when we talked about it. I'll tell you this. If RCMP, and I guess it's not going to happen in Alberta because Alberta's premier went on the record, said it's not going to happen in Alberta. And then I would imagine, par for the course, Saskatchewan will probably follow suit. But let's say that somewhere in Canada, RCMP start kicking down people's doors and seizing their firearms. It's going to be a hell of a story. And we'll cover it here on Real Talk. I'll tell you that much. Chelsea the Ginge says if a person's biggest life issue is not being able to keep a gun they own, they must have a pretty sweet life. Old Timers wonders what will be the penalty for those who refuse to surrender their firearms for compensation. Daniel wonders what gun is getting banned that is qualified as a sport shooter. Says, I'm asking as a gun owner. Horse Lake Ranch says Carney's famous for saying one thing in Alberta and the opposite in Quebec. Says, I don't trust him. I think Horse Lake, that was the criticism of his predecessor. But listen, if you want to send us examples, that could be a perfect flamethrower for sure. I want to get to more of these comments, more of what Mark Carney had to say in this exclusive on Real Talk. We're talking to you on the 10th of September, just a couple of days away from the next weekend. And our friends in Jasper National Park are ready to welcome visitors from across the country and beyond. It's actually been an incredibly moving and encouraging summer season out in the crown jewel that is Jasper National Park. This is Albertans' playground, but this is Canadians' playground too, and that's evident every single time you're out there. I guarantee it. I can guarantee you're going to see license plates from across Canada when you stop in for a coffee. Maybe you pop into the Jasper Brewing Company, pop into Evil Dave's for a bite to eat, whatever it is, whether you're staying for a couple of hours or staying for a couple of weeks. Canadians love to recreate and relax in Jasper. One of the benefits of heading out there in, they call this shoulder season. This is basically what, summer transitioning into fall. All of you hikers know that. I don't have to tell you. It's like the most incredible colors, the most incredible scenario you can imagine this time of year, but there's also less crowds out there. So just logistically, if you want to get out there, you're going to find exactly what you're looking for in beautiful Jasper. Fall season is here. Those golden larch trees are famously exploding right now. That beautiful, stunning shade of yellow. The air is so crisp out there. It's an ideal time to reconnect with nature. Maybe a paddle on Pyramid Lake. You got plenty to do and see. And of course, they've got 15 years officially celebrating life under the stars in Jasper. Programming for the 2025 Jasper Dark Sky Festival is now live, and we can't wait to celebrate that 15th anniversary with you. Look at that shot that Johnny's showing. Incredible. The Northern Lights, almost like nowhere else. Jasper's like, when they talk about these dark sky preserves, Jasper's recognized around the world in this context. So the 2025 Jasper Dark Sky Festival goes October 17th to 26th. Check out jasper.travel for details on more adventures under Jasper's starry skies. And I know that this may trigger a few people, John, but I have to point it out. We are just a few weeks away from ski season, believe it or not. That's right, Marmot Basin. Look at this shot from Jasper's Skytram. And then, of course, Marmot Basin ready to welcome visitors. It's going to be an amazing season out there. I just know it. I can't wait to get back out there. They got that new quad. I think it's a season old. There's nothing like being out in Jasper. I don't have to start using the word winter quite yet, but ski season will soon be upon us. And, of course, I will see you on the mountain. My Jasper Memories proudly presented weekly on Real Talk by our amazing friends at Tourism Jasper. You can find them online at jasper.travel. All right. Well, Kenzie says, look at all this focus on legal gun owners, even though they're not the ones committing gun violence. I think everybody agrees with that in the sense that the legal gun owners are very rarely the folks that you got to worry about. Nobody's worried about the rancher that has his shotgun locked up in the safe because he needs it, or nobody's worried about the hunter that's properly storing it. But again, and I'm not going to read through the list again, but I'm noticing like a trend in the chat. Like a lot of people are talking about this. This is something that's resonating with you, Real Talkers. But again, an efficient gun buyback program for assault-style firearms, revoking gun licenses for individuals convicted, not accused, convicted of violent offenses, RCMP classifying new firearms, increasing funding to forensic investigations, and oversight, toughen oversight of firearms licensing. Like who does that? Nobody's worried about that, right? Yeah, I think people want to make sure that like the guy that has a history of intimate partner violence or domestic violence and has access to a firearm and has threatened the life of the life of his partner or his former partner or somebody that he knows or somebody that has a history of interactions with police and violent crime. And is in a dispute at work or a dispute with their neighbor, doesn't have access to firearms.
Sure.
Like, I think that, that's a pretty tough thing really to argue against. And I think probably one of the big reasons why, and I keep saying politicians, it's not just politicians, but one of the reasons why folks are going to try to convince you that like the government wants to take your guns. The government's coming to take your family security. The RCMP is going to compromise your private property and take your stuff, is because it's pretty tough to oppose the actual measures that the average Canadian would be very happy to see. Sure. Like, who's going to argue against pulling gun licenses from convicted violent offenders?
Absolutely no one.
I guess just convicted violent offenders are going to be the ones that are going to push back on it, right?
And if you read through all that, go back and watch the show later. I mean, it's tough if you don't agree with the gun buyback to disagree with some of the other things that Carney and the Liberals are putting forth, like toughening up on bail and training a new 1,000 officers to go after, crime related to fentanyl use, which some illegal guns are tied to as well. So, like, there's things in there that people on the right and staunch, critics of Carney and his government will actually be like, okay, I'm in favor of this, but tied into it is also that buyback, which obviously no one's down for. So they just have to do it right. And I was kind of like, when he was saying it was voluntary, I'm like, well, it is, but it kind of isn't, because if you have an illegal gun, it's not voluntary at all.
Blasheep says, this chat is out of order and this whole show is out of order. We need a gavel. How about this one from Deb, who says, great interview. The Prime Minister, a highly intelligent leader. I believe that he has the best interests of all Canadians in mind. Says he definitely set things straight on the gun control issue. Deb, thanks for watching today. We sure appreciate it. Also, hey, I wanted to touch on too, we got into it a little bit. I referenced Ontario's Premier Ford. Did you notice the PM kind of smirked when I said Ford's name, when I talked about Ford going on the record and said that the premiers were going to hold the federal government accountable. Said the premiers will be holding Carney accountable for delivering full-fledged and not half-baked reform. And I know that that's a big deal for a lot of people, and I'm not going to say just in the major cities. This is an issue in urban and rural communities, but in particular, when we were working on lining up this interview, and finally when we were able to confirm it, basically 24 hours before it happens, somebody reached out to us that's been working very hard and at a high level involved in Edmonton's downtown recovery. There's been this this DRC, this coalition of people, and acknowledging that, and we've talked about this on the show just in the past little while. We welcomed, do you remember that? This was a great interview, spokespersons from Calgary and Edmonton, talking about the two cities' downtowns and what's worked and what hasn't, and how is Calgary's downtown kind of, I want to say thriving right now. How does it basically have like a 10-year head start? This is what the experts estimate, a 10-year head start on Edmonton. And how does that happen, and how does Edmonton catch up? And a huge recurring theme is public safety and how people feel when they're downtown. And so this individual, a friend of the show, reached out when she heard that Carney was going to be on, and she said, you have no idea how big the bail reform thing is. She says that's something that premiers, that police chiefs, that families, the families I referenced earlier, families who have lost loved ones in violent incidents, they have been lobbying the federal government to make these bail reforms for ages, for years. That idea that there's basically a revolving door, that career criminals or people that are accused of violent offenses, or people that are already in some circumstances out on bail for previous alleged offenses and are offending again. There was a horrific story in Canada just within the past couple of weeks of a sexual assault of a child from, allegedly by somebody who has a history of sexual offenses against children, like that sort of thing. What about the dad that was killed in front of his family in the home invasion in Ontario? We talked about that several episodes ago. There, Canadians, and rightfully so, many Canadians feel like Canada has been super soft on crime, and in particular on violent offenders. And so this individual reached out to the show. She said, I know that there's going to be a lot of questions, and we did get a lot of questions. I should read some of them here. She said, but please make sure that you talk about bail reform, because for people that have been working hard, and this is not exclusively an Edmonton issue, this is not exclusively an Alberta issue, but she said people have been like desperate for action on this, meaningful action on this. And that's why I wanted to ask them the pointed question. When Ford says not half-baked reform, what does full-fledged reform look like?
Sure.
I know people are desperate to see it.
And again, there's not many people that disagree with this, Ryan. I mean, we're not talking about bail for someone who, got caught with marijuana for the first time or whatever. Marijuana is legal now. But you know what I mean? These are people who have been in and out of the system, armed robbery, theft, assault, things like that over and over again. If you have multiple convictions, I mean, there's got to be a precedent set for learning your lesson. It's just simple as that.
Yeah, right? And I think you're right. Now there is, and I can think.
The punishment should fit the crime.
I know, off the top of my head, correct. And again, I'm not going to spend time, googling this. But I'm pretty certain, because I've got friends there, like the John Humphrey Center for Peace and Human Rights has spoken out on this before. I believe it was around the 2023 bail reforms that I think now people look back, in particular maybe even 2019, and say, well, it was inadequate. It hasn't gone far enough. Mm-hmm. And the Prime Minister essentially acknowledges that, or they wouldn't be doing it. But they do have concerns that in particular, members of vulnerable communities, people that are typically, we know that, Indigenous people in Canada, members of other marginalized communities are disproportionately represented in the justice system, in particular incarcerated. And there are some concerns that when a government, promises, to crack down on crime, that many cases it disproportionately impacts, people in certain communities. And so that is certainly an issue. I saw it described once, I think it was 2023. They described the bail reforms as an iron fist in a velvet glove, right? In other words, that it wasn't exactly sort of what those groups were looking for, but a government has to respond. In particular, just to say it, a minority government has to respond to what the majority of Canadians are looking for to a certain degree. A minority government has to deliver enough, first of all, to get enough votes from opposition parties to pass anything. And number two, if you want to survive politically, like I'm sure Prime Minister Carney does, you got to find a way to acknowledge Canadians' biggest concerns, and this is obviously one of them: public safety.
Sure, and I take your point like that as well. But I think we're also thinking about people who, rape and assault and people who hurt children. Yeah. Especially, we see those stories all the time where this person has been released into your community. Watch out, and we read it and we're like, why were they only in a year? Yeah. This is clearly going to happen again. You can't reform someone who sexually assaults children, I think, in 12 months. So yeah.
I feel like I want to keep reading gun comments because there's just a ton of them. You guys aren't easing up on it, which is fine. That's great. We're here to chat. It's, that's the whole point of this. Ms. KD says, my dad, thanks for your YouTube membership, by the way. She says, my pops was a hunter with many guns locked up. My stepbrother, also a hunter with many guns locked up. One of his sons used one of them to die by suicide. She says, this is not an unusual story when it comes to men's suicide. That from Ms. KD. I'm so sorry about the tragedy your family experienced. There's you hear stories like nightmare stories of like kids playing with guns that have, that had access to them accidentally or otherwise. And a young person gets shot. The other kid's life has changed forever. I know that people are going to write in and say, we store our guns in safes. We store our ammunition separately. I want to, I'm making up the number, but I bet you 99% of gun owners are absolute by the book responsible gun owners, 100%. And if you are, I guess you don't really have much to worry about. Again, I'm not a gun guy. And like I said, we've reached out.
A lot of people aren't. That's the thing. I was looking up today. I think 25% of homes in Canada, it said, have a firearm in them. And like we got to figure out the proportions of that, because obviously, like in the Yukon, I was reading, it's like 67% of homes have a rifle or a firearm in it, whereas in urban areas it's probably less. But so I think this affects no one, and it also affects everyone who owns a gun. Like for you and me, none of this affects us. Like no one's going to come to our house and find a firearm.
I guess it affects you in the sense that if it gives you a perception, I'm not trying to sound cynical by using the word perception, but if it provides you a perception of safety, then I guess it does impact you.
Sure.
And if you're not shot by someone
100%,
who's a career violent offender that had access to a firearm, I guess.
But I mean, in terms of getting in an uproar, it's you're not going to find firearms at the majority of Canadians' homes.
So. Yeah. So like you said, 26%. It's estimated approximately 26% of Canadian households own firearms. I think Canada's average is actually higher than the United States average. I've read that before too. Though estimates vary, they say hunting the primary reason for ownership. They say the percentage of Canadians who are individual gun owners is much lower, with some estimates suggesting around 3 million adults own firearms. That would be the rate of individuals with gun licenses in Canada, approximately 7%. So, 1 in 10, let's call it, generously speaking. Hey, we also want to recognize just the love we're seeing on the show. We appreciate that. Into our super chat, Harrison kicks in $7 in the super chat. Thanks, pal. Harrison basically says, here's a cold one for the PM. We did offer him a beer. We offered his security detail cold beers. They all, for whatever reason, John, it was very strange.
We'd like to.
They said no. I don't know.
We'd like to officially quell your concern that the RCMP do not drink in the morning.
Yes, nobody was drinking when they were here, although they did admire the wet bar. We have to say that. Harrison goes on to say, I fully support the plan for Jespo and Johnny to run the half marathon next year. This was a terrible idea that popped up, but I want to read something to you, and I've not shared this with you. I just checked my phone for the first time. Oh my gosh. Okay, I got to scroll down now. Thanks to everybody that sent private messages here today. Reed Clark, who's running for council in Ward Nakota Isga. Well, and Reed is our first ever YouTube VIP channel member. So a shout out to Reed. Reed sent me this at 11 o'clock last night. He's probably out putting campaign signs up. I think that guy's working till like 3 a.m. on his campaign.
Yeah, he's out and about. I see him on socials.
And Reed says, he texted me at 11 o'clock. He says, I'm listening to your show today on the pod. He says, He says, I just did the half marathon with zero training. He says, I signed up the Friday before at the press conference. He says, but because it ran through my ward, I had to do it. He says, that's the kind of commitment I have to the people of Nakota Isga. And then he says, let's do it next year. So Reed Clark wants you and I, he'll be a city councilor by then, mark my words. He wants to see you and I join him on the 2026 Edmonton half marathon.
Well, thanks, Reed, for shattering my excuse that you need to train for 3 months before you do a marathon safely.
Yeah.
Now we're going to have to just dive in like a bucket of cold water.
I don't know what Reed weighs, but I weigh more.
He looks in better shape than both of us.
He's in way better
sure.
shape. I won't say to you, you're in he's in way better shape than me, that's for sure.
He's way ahead of us.
Ken, thanks for the Super Chat contribution. That's why we call you Super Chat, Ken. You're amazing. Says, I wasn't able to see the show due to work commitments. You can always catch it later, buddy. Says, but here's a beer in the fridge for a show that has the stature to welcome the Prime Minister. Great work. Thank you very much. It means a lot to us.
Thanks to Casman.
This is wind in our sails.
Just became a Real Talk subscriber. You can head over to our YouTube homepage and click join to check out all the levels of membership.
Ryan, circling back on the whole, did somebody say nobody needs guns? I think there might be just a debate in here. Listen, I'm not anti-gun at all. I want to be very clear about that.
We just don't utilize them.
I'm not personally into guns, but like I've shot guns. Like, my best friends are hunters. I'm married into a hunting family. I'm not your enemy. I'm not that guy.
They're in existence, and they always will be.
Just to be clear on that. But Ryan basically says, but like not anybody needs like fast sports cars or motorcycles either. I guess we can get into this debate. Ken K says, if you store your gun in a gun safe and your ammo secured elsewhere, you are a good gun owner. That effectively eliminates the gun as a home protection device. Also true. That's why I recommend boxers. KD says a defendant has the right to be tried in a reasonable amount of time. And if they're not tried in that case, they must dismiss. That's the law. That was one that popped up, I think, for a lot of Canadians when it came to that. You remember the Coots border blockade?
Yes.
And then the RCMP raid on the trailer, and they had found that kind of cache of weapons, and the guys were facing very serious charges.
A lot of disturbing weapons.
Right? but like a lot of people, in particular, and it wasn't just, I want to be fair in my comment on this. I mean, I think it was a bozo move what they were doing, don't get me wrong, but I don't want to say that it was just these men's supporters or the accused supporters that were demanding fair trial and a fair timing on that trial, but I think it was also people across the country that subscribe to the application of a justice system that should be recognized around the world as one that other countries would aspire to, right? And a big part of that is like your day in court. We talk a lot about your day in court and we don't have to open this can of worms right now, But the same sort of a thing about everybody's paying attention as NHL training camps are underway, and Alex Formanton's just signed a deal. It was like a 3-month deal to go over and play in Europe. People are wondering, like, is Carter Hart going to get a PTO, like a professional tryout agreement with an NHL team to come back? These are the men, the former World Junior players that were exonerated in a court of law, but facing some pretty serious charges. I know someone's going to write in right now that not guilty does not equal innocent. You're not wrong. But like when we talk about in Canada, like someone has their day in court, there's a lot implied. There's a lot that comes with that. We expect that somebody will be investigated judiciously and fairly and with integrity. We expect that if charges are laid, that it will be done in an appropriate period of time, that someone will have access to legal representation, right? If they can't afford it. And then at the end of the day, that the court's decision is the court's decision with a right to appeal. So that I think that these are, again, as a civilian, that's what I look at. And so I think, the comments here are fair and they're right. Chantel says, if we get a pipeline for other countries to buy our oil at a fair price, sure. But that's not up to Alberta to force another Liberal government to build and pay for it. Chantel's not wrong. And Carney was very clear. He like, I hate using the word corrected, but that is kind of what he did. My phrasing was a little loose when I said you've pledged. Basically the announcement of this major projects office in Calgary, they're talking about $500 billion of investment, infrastructure investment for projects, major projects deemed to be in the national interest. And he was like, yeah, it's not government money, which is true.
Not public money, it's private.
But why do you think he was so quick to correct me on that? Why do you think he was so quick to
the
point
optics of it.
Right?
Just, yeah.
The federal government is not putting up $500 billion to build all these new pipelines and railroads. But if there is investment appetite from industry or private investors, and this is going to be in the tens of billions of dollars, and that's assuming that you can get it through, with the process and everything. But he's using the words, the Prime Minister is using the words fast track, right? Because everybody, you'll notice he kind of, and I don't mind that he did this, he's a G7 leader. And by the way, when's the last time you guys ever saw me read notes doing an interview? Isn't it kind of weird? But I asked him about it specifically. Like I said that, it's not, when it comes to what's holding up investment, infrastructure investment or energy expansion in Canada, it's not like the movement of private capital in Canada is restricted by regulation, not public spending, right? It's regulation that's restricting it. And that's a can right there to open. A lot of people say regulation. You mean like consultation? You mean like environmental monitoring? Like, are these the things we're talking about getting rid of? I don't think anybody wants to get rid of those. Well, some people might. But here is the question. What else will you do to fix the regulatory maze that has led to delays and cancellations of major projects across the country? Because there have been many projects, some really high-profile ones, that died on the vine because the financing behind them died. The interest died, right? Like that's the story of Energy East right there. People talk a lot about governments killing pipelines. Northern Gateway died in the courts. Energy East died because the financing walked away from it. There was no appetite for it. So, that's something I think that's worth mentioning. It's an important one as well. But this major projects office in Calgary, people have big expectations, and I think it's huge that it's established and headquartered right here in the province of Alberta. We'll look for more of your comments. We've got a lot of emails to sift through. Of course, tomorrow's episode, that'll be on the 11th of September with Politico's Nick Taylor-Vasey. One you won't want to miss. You can watch it live here on YouTube or anywhere on our social media platforms, our Real Talk live stream presented by California Closets. And of course, you can always catch it later on our podcast, everywhere you get your podcast. Thanks to everybody that has subscribed. Before we go, I'm really excited as well to let you know that our friends at Edify Edmonton are officially getting set for their annual Top 40 Under 40 celebration. This is a list of the Metro Edmonton region's top 40 movers and shakers under the age of 40. John, you remember those days? Remember those days, sub 40, when your whole life was ahead of you? We're going to be gathering November 19th at the Winspear Center in beautiful downtown Edmonton, just a few blocks from our studio. You can get your tickets today. This is an event you won't want to miss. And check out their current, this edition is beautiful, Industrial Revolution and more, with coverage on urban activities, food, culture, style, and people. Edify Edmonton, a must-read for anybody in Alberta who wants to know what's really happening in the capital city. I'll see you November 19th at the Winspear Center. Again, get your tickets at edifyedmonton.com. Want to thank those of you that checked out Real Talk for the very first time today. Want to thank those of you that returned to visit after not being here for a while. We saw you, even though I wasn't able to respond while we were talking. I saw you in the live chat saying you were joining us live for the first time in a long time. Let's make that a habit. Let's make sure that Real Talk continues to drive meaningful, integral conversation, not just in the province of Alberta, but across the country. Circle your calendars. October 3rd, our Edmonton mayoral candidates Real Talk Roundtable. October 10th, our Calgary mayoral candidates Real Talk Roundtable. Find out more at ryanjespersen.com.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Duvedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.